Nigeria is at the forefront of a financial revolution that's transforming the way people access and manage their money. But with rapid growth comes new challenges and opportunities. Today, we explore the latest trends, innovations, and insights shaping the digital banking landscape in Nigeria and what it means for the future of financial inclusion, regulation, and profitability. I'm joined by Segunfunmi Oyedele, founder, Raiz Digital Services, for more on this. Thank you, Segunfunmi, for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Right. Now, tell me, what are your thoughts on the current state of digital banking in Nigeria, and how do you see it evolving in the next few years?
I think we've done a great job in the digital banking space in Nigeria. If you look at the records over time, pre-COVID, post-COVID, in the last 5 years, Nigeria has ranked the #1 in the digital banking space in Africa, #6 in globally. In 2021 alone, there was about 3.7 billion real-time transactions that happened in Nigeria. Between 2020 and 2022, in 2020, I think there was about 29% of digital payments that was being made, and in 2023, that rose to 43%. In terms of people getting paid their salaries or in terms of income, there was about 16% of all incomes in Nigeria that was done digitally. In 2023, that rose to about 19%. So the digital banking space has really been pushing the conventional banking towards agility, towards competition, and making sure Nigerians are feeling globally included or financially included in the financial space. So I think we've done a great job so far.
Well, just like you already said, Nigeria is undoubtedly Africa's leader in digital payment. Now, I'd like you to talk to us about some of the key trends shaping the digital banking and payments landscape in Nigeria. I mean, how are these trends impacting the industry? Because you've talked about how the Nigeria is really doing well, first in Africa, sixth globally. So, I mean, what are the trends shaping all of this?
You notice that there's been a major rise in terms of mobile payments in the digital bank space or in the financial space in Nigeria. Look at the rise of POS terminals. In 2020, I think there were about 155,000 POS terminals. By 2022, we had over 1.1 million POS terminals. That's almost a 1,000% increase, and the numbers keeps growing. So that's one of the major areas. There's been less cash dependency. There are digital payments. If you want to take your transport, you can pay for transportation. Bolt, Uber, all of those things, you can do that within the app. You don't have to start carrying cash. So those are some of the areas that has been taking good space as far as the trends, online shopping, and all of this has been supported by the growth in other sectors, right? If you look at the fashion industry, entertainment, and all of those things, they are growing at a very great rate for Africa at large, and Nigeria is taking the lead in that channel. So the digital banking space, the payment infrastructure is starting to support that growth that we're seeing from other sides of the sectors. So I think the POS, the online payment, the digital payments, the virtual cards, those are the trends that we're seeing in the digital banking space.
Right, you would notice that we have a couple of challenges in this particular sector, and I would like you to talk to us about how to address them. We put up some on the screen already, but of course, whether they be regulatory, cybersecurity risks, or even access, I'd like you to speak to us about which is most concerning and how these challenges can actually be addressed.
I think the biggest concern is from the regulatory side and also from the data security side. For the regulatory side, I think one of the ways we can address this is to engage more with the regulators and also have the regulators engage more with digital bank like us or other fintechs. And there has to be some form of engagement, really understanding what the regulations are. And I think we also need to adopt a use case or risk-based regulatory system rather than a one-size-fits-all, creating regulations based on the risk each business services poses, rather than just subjecting all the businesses to the same regulatory.
Segunfunmi, are you still there?
And I think this space needs to be a little bit simplified for businesses. So that's one of the ways. Then the secure, as far as data security, cybersecurity, I think entirely within the banking space, we need to shift from a reactive standpoint to a proactive standpoint. And what do I mean by that? Most times we wait for things to happen, people to get scammed, then we implement security features for that particular scenario or that use case of scam. Then another case comes up and we implement another feature to tackle that. But how about we move from being reactive to proactive? We implement all of these things with all of these potential downfalls or pitfalls in mind. So we implement those things, preventive measures, rather than just, fixing things or trying to remediate things that's already happened. So those are some of the major challenges in the space. And I think those are some of the ways that we could really address them. Building like a zero trust architecture, doing a lot of trainings, a lot of awareness, educating people in ways that they could also protect themselves as customers, and even for the banking space, for the regulators, for the financial services providers. There needs to be a lot of regulations, a lot of teaching, a lot of trainings, a lot of awareness, and that needs to continue to go forward. For another thing that comes to mind for the regulatory space is maybe there needs to be an adoption of
Right. I guess you're talking about some of the challenges and how to address them. If you can hear me, I'd like you to continue from where you stopped.
Regulatory because updating the regulations and all of them to keep you up to date with those changes.
Right. Talking about regulation, that's something I'm sort of, interested in, and we understand that regulation is important, but sometimes it feels like it's sort of stifling innovation and creativity. I like you, to look at how regulators can actually balance innovation with risk management in the digital banking space. I know you've talked about, risk-based regulations. I'd like you to, speak more to that and, any other thing they can do in that regard.
So I think for the risk-based regulation, it needs to be some form of tailored regulation, right? Looking at the risk, a microfinance or an institution issuing out microloans or micro savings accounts should not be subjected to the same regulation a major bank is going to be subjected to. But what we're saying is these regulations are almost a one-size-fits-all. As long as you're providing financial services in this kind of space, you have to go through all of these regulations. So that's somewhat kills innovation. It doesn't support a lot of smaller businesses or smaller financial service providers. And looking at there needs to be a very detailed risk-based framework that is established, right? So for regulators, they need to come up with a risk-based framework that supports different business spaces, different services, and there needs to be a way to keep up to that and to measure that against what you're offering. So I think that's what needs to be done. The essence of this is just to foster collaboration between both the regulators and the service providers, and also create more like sandboxes. We could have regulatory sandboxes where financial services can test new regulations, give feedbacks to the regulators before launching it out to the public customers. So let there be regulatory sandboxes where we can test things out, give feedback, see how things are playing out. And there could be a two-way communication between the service providers, the regulators, because the end goal is for us to provide adequate services to the customers. So I think those are some of the things we need to do.
Absolutely. Now let's get to this particular one that I feel is very important for players in that sector, and you also happen to be one. The essence of the essence of digital is democratization of financial inclusion, but in the light of the underserved populations, do you think much of this has actually been achieved? Because when we talk about adoption, I mean, sometimes it feels like it's the tech savvy that are beneficiaries. What about the underserved? Are we really reaching out to them? Are we really getting them into this particular space?
So I think we're making efforts, but I just don't think the effort is right there yet. Not because, and the solution to that would not only come from just the financial space, right? For you to get to the underserved, there needs to be proper collaboration within financial industries or financial service providers, with the telecommunication providers, with NGOs and all of those things. Because out of the Nigerian population, as of 2021, the stats says we have about 170 million people living in Nigeria. Only 25 to 40% of them are banking, have mobile banking. But building the right infrastructure in place, that number is set to increase. The more people are able to bank in a mobile way, the more you're able to provide services to those on the bank. Statistic has it that in Africa generally, and not just Nigeria, only 5 branches serve about 100,000 inhabitants. Compared to Asia, in Asia, for every 100,000 inhabitants, there are about 15 to 17 branches that serves them. So we need to also have more banks having branches in those local underserved regions. And there has to be a lot of education. You have to understand the people. You can't change something you don't understand. You can't change the people you don't understand. So the banks, we need to take efforts to going into those rural areas, understanding their pain points, and providing services that they need. Someone in the village probably doesn't need, currency conversion, switching currency to from one currency to another. They probably don't need that, but they could make use of micro loans. They could use micro services, micro savings, and things like that. That's one of the things that we're doing at Raiz Digital. We've provided some solutions that cater to people because we're built with the customer in mind. So we're very customer centric, and that's the approach we really need to take. We need to come from understanding their pain points, understanding what services they really need, and building things that really cater to their needs, and doing a lot of education, partnering with NGOs and initiatives in those regions, also supporting major social responsibilities. Let's create outreaches. Let's create things that support people that are underbanked, right? So let's work with the regulators. How can we provide a system where people that can afford a mobile phone can get it on a payment plan, something like that. Let people get mobile phones on a payment plan. Let them get internet services on a payment plan. So this is a problem that cuts across all regions, and it's not only for the digital banking service providers. It's something that we all need to come together collaboratively to be able to provide solutions for.
I like the expansion and sort of inclusion you're doing here, saying it's not just about the digital banks, and I know there is always that need to balance financial inclusion with the need for profitability. You talked about, how that we need more banks in some places, but would you put a bank there with, the infrastructure it would cost you, and then the human resource and, the cost of all of those things, overhead cost and all of that, only to get less than 50,000 deposits in a week or something? I mean, that's not something that sounds like it makes business sense. I'd like you to help us, strike that balance.
So I think this is where the government comes in, right? Some of these things you have to do both from the private sector and also from the public sector. For situations like this, there are governmental responsibilities, right? And you in the banking space, all you're doing is you're providing complementary services. You're working in line with the government. So if the infrastructure is going to cost, for example, let's say building a branch in a local village should cost 100 million naira. What if you get support from the government and maybe the land is discounted, the licenses and all of those things you need, you're working with the rulers of the villages and all of those things. And at the end of the day, instead of spending 100 million, you're spending 25 million. So that reduces your cost of setting up the branch, but you're also able to provide services. And at the end of the day, there's a saying or there's a belief that as long as you're providing good services, the profit will come. It's an investment. It's not something that's going to have a one-day turnaround.
Well, that profit will not come if we do not have money in the pockets and wallets of the people. So we probably also need to ensure that that is in place.
Exactly. And that is why I said it's not really it's not a digital bank problem. It's an entire country problem, right? What employment opportunities are we bringing to those local regions? If someone earns 10,000 naira a month, how much do you expect that person to save? And this person that earns 10,000 naira a month probably has 3 kids. So there needs to be, structures in place to even educate people, family planning, creating incentives for them to also get into other businesses, bringing other opportunities to the people in the village. We Nigerians, we're very hard workers. So it's not as though people are not willing to work hard, but there's not just enough opportunity for people. So we need to create those opportunities. For example, if you set up a branch in one of those local banks, or you bring a factory down there, you're creating employment opportunities, which means people are going to earn more, and which means there's going to be more money in the bank. So it's a cycle. The level of your salary that you get wherever you work is a factor of, one, your importance and your skill set. How important are you? That's why you have you have some of the directors, they could work 6 hours a day and get paid more than someone that works 12 hours a day. It's just because of the investment they've spent in education, building their skill set and all of those things. So how do we create a space where we can empower those people to be able to earn more? If they're able to earn more, then there's more money in the bank. You can only save what you have. So those are some of the areas we need to look into holistically. And it's not only from the digital banking space, it's a complete nationwide issue.
Beyond the things you said, I'd like you to also tell us more about untapped opportunities and maybe some innovations that can actually help deepen inclusion in this space.
So I think we could leverage technology. Everything relies on technology. Look at the likes of AI, artificial intelligence. With artificial intelligence, you could increase customer satisfaction. You could also help with the KYC process, signing up users, providing more services, we can leverage data analytics to understand users. What are they? For example, with good data analytics, right? And at Raiz, we're more of a data company than even a banking company. We spend a lot of time understanding people's financial situations by studying their data. So if you study people's data, you will see how much transactions happen in the local region compared to in an urban region. What are the things they're spending money on, and what are the areas that they have financial needs and things like that. Then you're able to curate solutions that work in that. So leveraging technology is one of the things. In now looking at the global space or the Nigeria at large, you can leverage the likes of blockchain, decentralized financial system, where people can easily transact. There's yet to be a complete infrastructure that allows Africans or Nigerians to bank with a neighboring country, right? Sending money from Nigeria to Ghana is still a major issue. So we need to come up with leverage technology, blockchains, and the likes to solve some of these major problems. So we're yet to really tap into blockchain. We're yet to tap into the open banking, where you can be a banking customer of Bank A, and you have access to transacting with someone that is in Bank B without having to go through many intermediaries, right? Open banking, where everything, there's shared resources, there's shared liquidity, no bank is running out of cash, no bank is running out of money, all of those things. I mentioned earlier also leveraging technology for regulation. There's yet to be a very standard regulatory technology where you have a compliance system that is built with technology. If CBN releases any new regulation, the system picks it up and it lets you know, flags you, and lets you know what you need to do to be compliant, or even automatically submit some of the regulatory documents on your behalf, making sure you're always compliant, making sure you're aware of all of these things. We're yet to even tap into the use of technology for education, educating people, storytelling. How do you curate stories in a way that a grandmother that is 60 years old or 70 years old in a village, understand what it means to convert currency or to transact or to use a virtual card or to use a debit card and all of those things. So we need to be very creative. The finance space is something that cuts across everybody. Everybody has to do with finance. Everything in your life still revolves around finance. The clothes you wear, the food you eat, everything revolves around finance. So why are we not paying enough attention into educating people about this particular space, which is one thing that cuts across every single person, regardless of your financial class? You have to do with finance, regardless of where you live, regardless of what you do. The finance is something that's important to everybody. So why are we not doing enough job in educating people or making sure people understand what this is?
Interesting. I'd like to close by asking you what your predictions are for the future of digital banking in Nigeria in 30 seconds.
So I think the future of digital banking is great. In 2021, like I mentioned, there was only about 40% people that are using mobile banking. By 2026, there's prediction that we should be hitting around 100 million. The global transactions or digital payments in Nigeria is set to go from 2.9 billion to about 6.8 billion by 2027. Within 2020 and 2027, the real-time transactions, global banking, financial inclusion in the global.
Well, I guess that's a good place to leave it. Thank you so much, Segunfunmi Oyedele, founder, Raiz Digital Services, for your time and your thoughts on the show today. I appreciate it.